But anyways, bear with me. Appreciate all of you coming. Really pleased to have our Premier Jason Kenney with us today. And representing the federal government, we have Terry Duguid, and he's the Federal Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages, and a suspected Winnipeg Jets fan.
Suspected. I think it's more than a suspicion.
I really think that he likes the Oilers. Yes, but representing Winnipeg South, so welcome. And also really pleased to have Minister Sawney here with us today, and I know you and I met a number of months ago at the Herb Jamieson Center, so thank you so much for being here. And also, just really happy that my wife Karen and my 3 sons are here. It's special to have your immediate family, so Scotty, Stephen, and Andrew. Thank you guys for being with me. And then also we have many directors of the mission and from our support fundraising team and friends and family. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And so to start, I'd like to call on Terry Duguid, our friend from the federal government.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you on Treaty 6 territory, the homeland of the Métis Nation, in the beautiful city of Edmonton. I left Winnipeg yesterday, and it was about minus 27 or something, so a nice balmy weather here, and great to be back in this beautiful province, the province of Alberta. Premier, I know you have a little bit of history in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I have a little bit of history here. I'm a University of Calgary graduate, and I spent 4 or 5 years studying here and really exploring the province from corner to corner. I should have stayed. I might be an MLA. I might be one of your... But just had an enormously fun time here in Alberta, and one of the very special things I did was courted my wife, who was born here in Calgary, and I dragged her back to Winnipeg, and the rest is history. And she sent me a little note this morning that it's Valentine's Day again, and you're away. So I get back late tonight, but I'll make it up to her tomorrow. But it's great to be back in Alberta, and it's great to be back with all of you to make this really, really special announcement. So, Premiers, Minister Sawney, friends and staff of the Hope Mission, it's really a pleasure to be here today on behalf of the Honourable Ahmed Hussein. Ahmed is our Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, and Minister responsible for Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. I know Minister Hussein really wanted to be with us today. He can't be, but he has asked me to say a few words on his behalf. And I think I can say for all of us gathered today, we share the goal of ensuring that vulnerable people in communities across the province have shelter and a safe place to stay at night, and that hardworking middle-class Albertans have access to high-quality, energy-efficient, affordable housing that suits their needs. Today is a big day for Hope, and it's a big day for the City of Edmonton as the construction of the new Herb Jamieson Centre will soon be underway. With financial support from the governments of Canada and Alberta, the new emergency shelter will provide critical space and support services for up to 400 of the city's most vulnerable residents. We are proud partners of this project because we believe everyone deserves the opportunity to succeed. Supporting the most vulnerable Canadians is a top priority of the Government of Canada, and I know our Premier. What has been achieved here today is the result of collaboration, partnerships, and cooperation. When governments and the nonprofit sector work together, we can do great things together and Canadians benefit. Our government's vision is for every Canadian to have access to housing that meets their needs, and housing, of course, that they can afford. We believe a home makes Canadians feel more secure and leads to a more prosperous future. This is something that every Canadian deserves. And so I'm proud to say that we've come a long way since Prime Minister Trudeau unveiled Canada's first ever national housing strategy in November 2017, a 10-year, $55 billion plan that will strengthen the middle class, fuel our economy, and give more Canadians across the country a place to call home. This truly represents a meaningful re-engagement by the federal government in housing. Across Canada, 1.7 million Canadian households are in core housing need, and their housing needs are not being met in the marketplace. And to address this, the strategy has a number of new tools and investments that are creating a new generation of housing across Canada. We're aiming not only to reduce chronic homelessness by 50%, but we'll also create up to 125,000 new housing units, repair 300,000 existing ones, and remove 530,000 households from housing need, so that families don't have to choose between paying the rent and paying for groceries. We are working to make housing more affordable here in Edmonton and across Canada. The National Housing Strategy involves many different players, and we must work together more closely than ever to achieve the ambitious targets we have set for the strategy. Innovative partnerships like we see today serve as an example of how cooperation can make a meaningful difference in the lives of Canadians. In the meantime, I want to congratulate everyone involved in this project, including the province of Alberta and our other funding partners, and most importantly, I want to acknowledge Bruce Reith and the dedicated staff at Hope Mission. Your hard work plays a vital role in Edmonton's homeless serving system of care. I've just been hearing a little bit about your storied history over 91 years. That is truly amazing. I applaud your vision and support in getting this development underway, and of course, best wishes to the people who will soon have a safe place to call home and a foundation from which they can begin to rebuild their lives. So thank you very much for inviting me today, and all the best as this development comes to be. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dogood. Appreciate that. And now I'm really pleased to have our Premier, the Honourable Jason Kenney, to come and share. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce, and welcome from Winnipeg, Terry. Too bad you can't stay for a game and see the Oilers beat the Jets, but exactly. I want to thank Minister Rajan Sawhney, Minister for Community and Social Services, for being here, and I know that her colleague, Minister Josephine Pond of Seniors and Housing, wishes she could be here for this really important day and this red letter announcement that means a lot to me personally, and it should mean a lot to Albertans. It was, I think, about a year ago that Bruce toured me around the current 60-year-old Hope Emergency Shelter just a couple of blocks from us here, and showed me the dilapidated condition of that building that has done so much over recent decades to provide emergency shelter to those most in need. And that building really represents the whole history of Hope Mission, which for nearly a century has been there for people at the margins, for the poorest in our society, for the homeless, for those facing personal crises, who simply need a roof over their heads. And more than that, Hope Mission, motivated by its tradition of Christian charity, its belief in love of one's neighbor, and particularly love for the poor, has been made up of tens of thousands of volunteers, donors, and staff who have made sacrificial gifts to reflect the dignity of people living in poverty in our society. Hope Mission began at the beginning of the Great Depression, when conditions were really unthinkably bad in this part of the world. And now, Hope Mission is needed as much as ever because we've been through 5 tough years in this province. And I know that Bruce can recount the statistics about how more and more people have been having to use the emergency shelter, more guests coming through the soup kitchen and for a warm meal, more folks applying for help with counseling and social services. And Hope Mission over these last 9 decades has grown to provide loving care, not treating people as anonymous clients, but as human beings possessed with the inviolable dignity created in the image and likeness of God. That's the faith conviction that stands behind the work of Hope Mission, and why it has had historically such tremendous results as a volunteer charitable organization, often operating on a shoestring budget. I know that for somebody in Bruce's position, means a lot of sleepless nights, wondering whether you're going to be able to make the payroll or keep the lights on or repair a building that is falling into disrepair. And that is why Bruce approached us a year ago about the dream and the vision of the Herb Jameson Centre, the new emergency shelter. And pitched me on the idea of the government of Alberta taking a leadership role in this. And Bruce told me that generous donors of Hope Mission had already made commitments of $8 million towards this project. And I thought, well, I can't think of a better way for government to partner than when responsible and generous people from civil society, from the private sector, are already stepping up. And that's one of the wonderful things about Alberta, Terry, is that even in challenging times, there's just an amazing culture of philanthropy and generosity from people in this community. So let me say thank you to the donors behind this project. I know many of them are anonymous, but their generosity will make a real difference in people's lives. Now, I know that, to be blunt, not everybody is in favor of having a renewed emergency shelter, because there is a understandable focus on long-term housing, and we support that. When I was minister responsible for Canada Housing Mortgage Corporation federally, Terry, we launched the Housing First strategy, which I know your government is carrying on, and we want to make sure that people have that access to long-term housing. But at the end of the day, in the real world, there are people who, just for whatever reasons, their lives aren't organized around that, and they need an emergency place in which to sleep, especially in a cold Alberta winter. And so I think Hope Mission is absolutely right not to let ideology or political agendas get in the way of a safe roof over the head of homeless folks who just need it, especially in tough conditions. So that's why I was so proud last spring to announce that if elected, our government would contribute $8 million to ensure the construction of the Herb Jameson Centre, Edmonton's new emergency shelter. And I want to thank the Government of Canada through CMHC and Minister Hussein, who, by the way, is a good friend of mine, for having, I tried to get him to run for my party before he ran for yours, Terry, but you won out on that one. He's a great guy. But I wanted to say we had initially committed in our platform to contribute the full $8 million, but in discussions, CMHC, the Government of Canada, indicated their willingness to partner, and we really appreciate that partnership, Terry. So please pass that back to Minister Hussein. But I am very excited today to formally announce that the Government of Canada... well, as joining with you do that. No, I'll do a restart. No. We'll do a restart on it. I'm very excited to announce today that the government of Alberta is contributing $4 million to the construction of the Herb Jameson Emergency Shelter here in downtown Edmonton. In partnership with the Government of Canada and private donors, we hope to see this built completed by next year. And so there will be, for decades to come, a safe place for those most in need in this community.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Really appreciate you coming and sharing, and also coming all the way from Winnipeg.
Yes.
Winnipeg. Okay. So I just wanted to just say a few words myself. First, I want to say how grateful I am to the Alberta government and federal government for coming through and investing in our most vulnerable population. And as you've heard, Hope Mission has been caring for the most vulnerable for the past 91 years, going back to 1929. This truly is a great day for Hope Mission and the people we strive to help. And this announcement today of the matching $8 million means we will be building a new Herb Jameson Centre. And so this dream, this vision of the new Herb Jameson Centre will become a reality after I think I've been working on this for more than 15 or 16 years, so I can't believe this is today.
Patience is a virtue.
Well, actually, I got a beautiful wife, and she's she was valedictorian in her class. All I have is tenacity, so I don't give up easy. But in any case, this wasn't in the speech. Sorry. The success of the Hope Mission has always depended on our volunteers and the people giving selflessly to help those in need. And so almost 4,000 Albertans donated to this project, and whether it's $10 or $1,000 or $1 million, it all matters. And the new Herb Jamieson Center will be a warm, welcoming place that is accessible and safe, a vital resource for those struggling with homelessness, addictions, and poverty. Being a cold weather city that Edmonton is, our doors will be open 24/7. And complementing this would be our 24/7 ambulances, which we affectionately know as the Hope Vans, where they pick up people all over the city and take them back to the shelter where it's safe. Our work will ensure the less fortunate are comfortable and have access to the services and support they need to continue their journey in life. Once again, thank you to the Alberta government, the federal government, and everyone else who donated or gave of their time to this project. To God be the glory. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Teresa. At this time, I have a very special person I'd like to call on, and I'd like to call on Robert Wisemental, if he could share a few words about his experience with the Herb Jamieson Center.
Good morning, or afternoon. I'm Robert, and I was a resident at the Herb Jamieson Center. I'm grateful that Herb Jamieson was there for me. I grew up in and around the Edmonton area. When I was 35, I moved to Calgary with my job. That is where I was introduced to crack cocaine. Cocaine became my life. Within a year, I was a full-blown addict. I managed to hang on to my job for about a year. And then finally, my employer of 20 years had no choice but to let me go. It didn't take long, and everything I owned was gone. I moved back to Edmonton. Addiction was the cycle of my life. I became truly homeless when my dad had a stroke, and he never came out of the hospital. I was unwelcome everywhere without family or friends. I heard about a shelter called the Herb Jamieson Center. I was nervous, but as you heard, it was cold out. That was my first stay at the Herb Jamieson Center. When I got there, the staff were very kind. They helped me. They gave me a bed ticket, registered me for the night, and gave me a blanket, and they showed me to my room. I can't tell you how much I appreciated having a place to stay. When I was there, I heard about meetings for men struggling with addiction. I attended a few of these meetings and realized I wasn't alone. I managed to stay clean for 3 years, and I fell back into my addiction. This time I knew exactly what to do. I went straight back to the Herb Jamieson Center, and I signed up. I was back on my way. This time, I learned the underlying causes of my addiction. I learned that there was more to recovery than just abstinence. The Herb Jamieson Center provided me with a lifeline. Had it not been for the Herb Jamieson Center, I'm sure I would have died out on the streets. It's been years since I left the Herb Jamieson Center. I have reconnected with family and friends. I have a rewarding job. I volunteer in the community, and I even help out here at Green Manor. And I'd like to thank you guys for this opportunity to share a bit of my story.
That's awesome.
So thank you, Robert, for sharing. Appreciate that. I would ask the media here to respect Robert's wish not to answer any questions. So I'm now going to be turning the microphone over to Christine Mayette, who is the Premier's press secretary. I think, though, before that, I think they wanted to have a picture of us here. I'm not quite sure who that is. I think it's from the Ministry of Community Services.
Take that down.
Robert, can you join us?
Robert, come on in. And Roger.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Robert, you come in here. There we go.
you, sir. Thank you. So, Christine, I'll just pass it to you.
All right, we'll go ahead and start on the floor. Janet?
Since I'm camping directly by the mic. Curious to hear from the Premier what you think about the latest activities with the Canadian Energy Centre. Like, how good of a job is it doing, and how much value for money are Albertans getting out of it right now?
Well, they're just 2 months old, so they're just getting started. I understand that they'll be launching some major advertising campaigns, which will be the central thrust of the Canadian Energy Centre. They'll be launching those in the weeks to come. I believe they're working on campaigns to support the Trans Mountain expansion, as well as other major resource projects. And of course, they'll be doing advertising on an ongoing basis to promote greater understanding across Canada and other parts of the world about how we are a responsible producer of energy, and how many jobs in Canada depend on our resources. So. A large function of what they'll be doing is essentially what Government of Alberta has done in the past intermittently, which is to use advertising and other means of communications to defend our vital economic interests as a province and as a country.
So what evidence do you have so far that it's working, that it's changing hearts and minds about Alberta energy?
Well, I wouldn't venture to assess that after just a few weeks. I think I launched and that made the announcement launching the centre in mid-December. We're now in early February, so we'll be happy to do an assessment once they've had several months of work to do to achieve that.
Mr. Premier, on this particular announcement as well, you touched on it, that there is a bit of a division about what's the best way to deal with some issues around homelessness. Looking forward a little bit to the budget, I mean, when it comes to transitional housing, how important will that play in this year's budget, and can we expect some more money to help deal with the next stages here of homelessness?
Well, listen, it's no secret that we have a fiscal crisis in Alberta. The government is basically broke. We're dealing with a $9 billion deficit, the largest in Canada, the largest in Alberta history. Without action, we're going to head over $100 billion in debt and sink ourselves in the trap of debt interest payments that would diminish money available for housing, education, healthcare, and other social programs. So our government was elected on a mandate to get back to balance, but we're doing so in a very compassionate and prudent way with, as you know, a 2.8% overall reduction in spending over the course of 4 years. And so we were able to happily retain the vast majority of our Alberta government funding for housing programs. But I don't anticipate any large increases given the real fiscal constraints that we're facing. We can't. I think that the worst thing to do would be to raise taxes at this point of real fragility in our economy. So we have to live within our means and find more efficient ways of doing things. And one of the great things about partnering with groups like Hope Mission is how efficiently they deliver services. Groups like this that are driven by volunteers and private donors, that are charities, are able to get a lot more bang for the buck, and that's one of the reasons that we made a platform commitment that has led us to today's announcement. We will continue to make strategic investments in supporting housing, in partnership often with the Government of Canada and the Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation, but I'm not expecting any huge new money that we simply don't have right now.
On a different topic, but probably a similar vein, we've seen a number of the walkouts from nurses and from some of the government employees. What kind of a message do you have to them as we move into the budget, and what kind of concerns do you have potentially over some more labor unrest?
Well, again, I've always expected that there will be some folks and some of the unions in the government sector who don't like fiscal restraint. That's hardly news. But we invite all of the good people in our public service unions to work with us collaboratively to find more efficient ways of delivering services. Because the alternative is either Alberta sinking into a sea of debt, which is a trap that means less money available for healthcare and more money for bondholders through interest payments, or raising taxes at a time of economic fragility. Neither of those neither of those things make sense. So Alberta, as both the McKinnon Commission and the Ernst & Young Performance Review on Alberta Health Services confirmed, Alberta has the most expensive healthcare system in Canada by far. We spend about 20% more per person than other provincial governments. And yet, we don't get the bang for the buck that would justify. We have longer surgical wait times generally. We have lower life expectancy, higher infant mortality. And so we need to challenge nurses, doctors, and other folks and the good people in the healthcare system to help us to figure out how it is that other provinces get better results for less money. And that's what Alberta taxpayers are expecting of all of us.
Yeah, Premier, I know you spoke...
And let me just come back to say that, sorry, just to complement that answer, to say that we do not expect that there will be significant layoffs in the public sector generally, or in our hospital system in particular. As long as we can show continued restraint on public sector compensation, our doctors are by far the best compensated in Canada. According to the McKinnon panel, and this I believe is confirmed by the Ernst & Young report, our GPs on average gross about $100,000 more than in the rest of the country. And our wonderful nurses, who deserve to be fairly compensated, make about 20% more per capita than in the rest of the country. And so while we hope we can avoid layoffs by having continued restraint in public sector compensation.
I just wanted to get your thoughts about the most recent developments with the rail line shutting down yesterday. CN and VIA announced shutdown of major operations. I know you commented on this earlier this week, but things are moving pretty quickly. And I'm just wondering, are you concerned at all about the situation in Alberta or Saskatchewan? Are you hearing from people in the business community?
Oh, yes. Look, this is becoming a very serious threat to the entire Canadian economy. This is a commodities-producing country, and we ship those commodities by rail. To have CN indicating it's going to shut down its entire Eastern Canadian network and potentially lay off thousands of blue-collar workers is devastating. It means that those commodities will back up. It means the people that produce them, their jobs are at risk now too. It means that our farmers here in the West are going to have a harder time getting their products to market. And guess what? You know, our farmers, they don't have defined benefit pensions. They don't have job security. They don't get paid unless that grain gets loaded onto the trains. Trains that are now being shut down. Why? Because some angry fringe groups are ignoring the democratically expressed wishes of every First Nation in northern British Columbia. 20 elected tribal councils not only support, but have signed benefit agreements on the Coastal GasLink project, and 8 of the 12 hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en people supported. Most of those elected councils consulted through plebiscites with their band members and saw generally 80% support for this project. And $1 billion has been set aside by Coastal GasLink in commitments to hire Indigenous workers and contract with Indigenous firms. Right now, today, there are at least 400 Wet'suwet'en and other northern BC First Nations people waiting to get to work on that project, and hundreds more who will be hired once it finally starts moving at full speed in the summer. And so whether it is Indigenous people having in many cases, their first crack at a good job that will lead to training and experience for a lifetime of work, or whether it's farmers in Western Canada, or manufacturing businesses in Eastern Canada, or blue-collar CN workers, all of their or commuters in Vancouver and Toronto, all of their livelihoods are being disrupted by an angry fringe. And so I think Canadians are losing patience with this. I know Indigenous people are. And I plead with you in the media to stop misreporting these protests as being supportive of the Wet'suwet'en people who have voted in favor of this project. It is a kind of reverse colonialism to project the political views of people living in southern urban Canada on a First Nation that wants to move its people from poverty to prosperity. And let me also say, this is not about the environment, because Coastal GasLink, I see these interviews with protesters trying to shut down democracy in front of the British Columbia legislature, assaulting reporters and elected MLAs, saying that they're trying to stop the oil sands. This has nothing to do with the oil sands. It frankly has nothing to do directly with Alberta. This is about bringing low-emitting British Columbia natural gas to the West Coast, supported by all of the First Nations, supported by the New Democrats, and liquefied natural gas, by the way, has been endorsed by every elected provincial and territorial government in Canada, supported by the Government of Canada, approved through an exhaustive regulatory process, confirmed by the courts who have shown great concern for Indigenous rights. This is about, whether we have, and then they go and interview these people and they say they're trying to stop the oil sands. This is about liquefied natural gas that will reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. So what we're doing is allowing a few dozen, at most a few hundred people, to try to shut down the Canadian economy, to block people with emergency medical appointments from getting across the Lionsgate Bridge, from blocking low-income workers and middle-class people from getting home to their families on the commuter lines in Vancouver. This is outrageous. It has to stop.
And just to follow up on that, there's been a lot of criticism, including in the media, that Justin Trudeau needs to be more involved in this process. Do you agree with that?
Well, that's for the Prime Minister to decide. I do think this is a moment of this is not just a regional issue. This has become and it's not just isolated. This has become a national economic crisis when our single largest backbone of the Canadian commodities economy is the CN Railway. If that is shut down, this is a matter for leaders at all levels across the country in which to become engaged.
Premier, have you or your officials had any kind of indication about the immediate economic impact of the blockade on Alberta's economy?
I haven't seen an estimate of this to date, but there is absolutely no doubt it will have a negative impact, and that will be further deepened by the coronavirus effect on the global economy. So it is very concerning. As you know, our provincial economy here is very fragile. We were probably in a recession in 2019, and there have been lots of reasons to hope that we will recover from that in 2020. But those could be jeopardized if this kind of foolishness carries on for much longer. I'll give you one example. If the rail lines are shut down, then that jeopardizes our ability to ship crude by rail, which could take out 400,000 barrels a day of shipments by rail. Over time, that's worth tens of billions of dollars to this economy. And then it would back up in inventories, and then we'd be facing potentially devastating differentials on our oil prices. So the farmers, other commodities producers will be massively affected if this continues much longer. So that's why we hope that that common sense and the rule of law will prevail very soon.
And on the Canadian Energy Centre, there is growing calls for this thing to be completely shut down and for your government to use the $30 million on something else. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Of course, the NDP and their fellow travelers and the political left want it shut down because they never wanted it to start in the first place, because they don't actually want to fight for our resource jobs. The centre is a couple of months old. They're just getting started, and their major program of work will include advertising to inform the public about our responsible resource development in this province and the need for all Canadians to be partners in prosperity. And you'll see those big efforts rolling out in the future. I'll remind you that $10 million of the centre's fund is effectively just reprofiled from previous Government of Alberta advertising budgets around energy issues. So work that was done by the previous government to advertise for the Trans Mountain expansion, for example, will continue under the aegis of the Canadian Energy Centre. So I'm not sure why they would want us to shut down what they were doing. And the other $20 million in its budget for advertising and other advocacy is coming from our new technology innovation and emissions reduction strategy that we've just imposed at the $30 level to comply with the federal regulations.
Oui, une question en français pour Radio-Canada. Pourriez-vous nous expliquer en pourquoi c'est important pour la ville d'Edmonton d'avoir un nouveau centre comme celui de Hope's Mission en ce moment et quels nouveaux services vont être prodigués ou offerts aux gens dans le besoin?
C'est un hébergement d'urgence pour les gens qui... excusez-moi. C'est un centre d'hébergement d'urgence pour ceux et celles qui n'ont pas l'hébergement et les sans-abri. Oui. C'est pour les sans-abri, c'est un centre d'urgence. C'est important parce que le centre actuel a été battu. I'm going to do this all again. My French is weak this morning. I'm sorry, Terry, help me out. Alors, c'est un centre d'urgence d'hébergement pour les sans-abri parce que le centre actuel, ça date il y a 60 ans. Et alors, il faut avoir un nouveau centre de ce type à Edmonton. La Hope Mission a un bilan de presque une 100 ans de livrer ses services aux sans-abri et les pauvres de notre communauté. Et il joue un rôle essentiel dans le réseau des services sociaux auprès des gens dans les situations de pauvreté et les quartiers défavorisés. Alors, je suis fier de notre engagement à contribuer 4 millions de dollars. J'aimerais remercier le gouvernement fédéral d'avoir fait un partenariat avec nous autres pour qu'on puisse construire ce nouveau centre d'hébergement d'urgence d'ici 2021. I finally got that out. Did you approve of my French? Okay.
Justement, par rapport aux 4 millions de dollars sur le site du projet, c'est inscrit que le gouvernement va contribuer à la hauteur de 8 millions de dollars?
Non, c'est effectivement, nous avons fait un engagement électoral d'investissement provincial de 8 millions de dollars, mais dans les planifications, le gouvernement fédéral a indiqué leur volonté de partager les coûts avec nous autres. Étant donné notre situation fiscale très difficile, nous avons accepté heureusement le coup de main du gouvernement fédéral à cet égard. En bout de ligne, ça importe peu de quel ordre du gouvernement vient l'argent. En bout de ligne, une moitié de l'investissement vient des donations, des dons privés. Et c'est un partenariat de société civile, du fédéral, du province, qui va aider les sans-abri.
Donc, le fédéral va contribuer à la hauteur de 4
millions
de dollars?
Oui, il contribue 4 millions de dollars pour pérenner le nôtre. Do you want to add to that? Au micro.
So my French is I thought you were not that great. Well, it's Western diversification is
okay.
But the question was...
Well, you guys are coming in for $4 million. So.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to just clarify because on the website it says 8 million. Yeah.
4 and 4.
8 from
the private sector.
Okay, and
Thank you.
I thought you were the francophone guy. Okay.
Sounds French.
Je vais vous garder en français aussi. J'ai une question de ma collègue à Calgary qui se demande en fait si qu'est-ce que vous pensez sur le désistement de John Byrne puis la course à la chefferie en général?
Sorry, Bruce, we're getting into politics here. Alors, je suis déçu parce que je croyais que John serait un très bon candidat à la chefferie de son parti, mais je respecte sa décision privée et c'est pour les membres de ce parti-là à prendre leur décision.
Last one.
Hi, Premier. I want to take another run at the Energy Center because you said it's early days. But you also said that obviously this is one of your signature promises, and you want this center to hit the ground running. So we do have a bit of a body of work here, and I think Albertans should get a sense from you. Are you happy with the way they're doing things? Are you content with what you've seen so far from the Canadian Energy Center?
Well, I think I gather they're producing some very good content on their website, but more importantly, they've really been getting set up with their research staff and marketing staff to launch some major advertising programs, which will be the core of their activity and their budget. So I look forward to the launch of that. Alberta has done, as you know, significant advertising to explain the need for responsible resource development in the past. The problem I find is that it was often very intermittent, and it was not continual. And I think that the fight, you know what, this provincial economy is, as we all know, closely tied to our energy sector, and we have been targeted by foreign-funded special interest groups seeking to landlock our energy, which is why we've had so many of these deep economic problems here. We can either surrender in the face of that foreign-funded campaign to landlock our energy, or we can fight back, and this is one of the ways in which we are doing so. It's not the only way. But whether it is addressing, providing more factual data on our environmental performance discreetly to key institutional investors and financial institutions in Europe, or whether it's explaining to Quebecers the benefits of liquefied natural gas supported by their government, or explaining to British Columbians how everybody will benefit from the completion of the Trans Mountain expansion. Or responding to political efforts in the United States to veto the approved Keystone XL project, to shut down Line 5, to impair the construction of Line 3. Everywhere we turn, we're facing these challenges, and the Canadian Energy Centre, once it's fully up and running, will be, I think, a useful platform to help us address those challenges.
I'm sorry, Premier, you've kind of been asked 3 times at this news conference to assess this centre, and you haven't answered all 3 times.
Well, I know. I'm saying I did answer. I said
no,
I'm not going to assess. I'm not going to assess something that's brand new. Where they've basically been getting set up in the past couple of months, getting staffed up, doing their research, preparing their marketing plans, engaging vendors to launch major marketing programs, and so I'm looking forward to them launching that. And the critical point is this: that we need to tell our story. I think this was one of the single most popular commitments that we gave to Albertans last spring. I know there's a lot of people who would just like Alberta to shut up and go away and accept passively the foreign-funded campaign to shut down our energy resources, but we won't let that happen. And as I say, this is part of the broader fight back strategy. This is one of the reasons. I was in Quebec last week doing a media blitz with Quebec media that I thought went very well. I thought we got our story out about being partners in prosperity and the shrinking environmental footprint of our energy industry. It's why I was in Washington, D.C., meeting with leaders of the United States to confirm support for pipeline projects in that country. So this is a multifaceted strategy. The marketing efforts yet to be launched of the Canadian Energy Centre will be part of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Herb. Sorry, Bruce. There were a few questions about. That's how this rolls. But more important things, you're going to get this built. Yes. Cheers. Thank you so much for being here, Terry. Thank you.